So most of you know, you heard about the 300-foot rule, why we ended up where we ended up. But if you remember, we did this, what we called SIAG, or the Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Group. That committee, 18 members, worked with us for 2.5 years to develop the sewer master plan. At the end of that, what they said was, set aside $1 million a year to address the septic to sewer, and form a group to work with that is impacted by the septic to sewer conversion. Form a group and work with them, an advisory committee, which we did. Go ahead. So I just talked about that. We're going to be talking about the neighborhood extension program, what's gotten funded for 2019, and what's available in the future, and then we'll have time for Q&A. Okay. So most of you are pretty familiar with a lot of text here. I'm not going to go through all of this, but really what I just said was the Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Group recognized that there was, at the time, about 3,000 homes within the city's urban growth boundary that were on septic. And they realized that that was going to have to change. And so they recommended we form that advisory committee, which we did. And one of the big drivers in the whole thing was the state and federal laws around what we call the 300-foot rule. I'll talk about more of that later, but the long and short of it is the state gave us a lot of latitude on that, really in the ninth inning of the whole thing. Late in the game, they relaxed their rule. But the council in 2018, they agreed to fund a septic to sewer conversion program at a rate of about $2.5 million a year. That is subject to some change, simply because councils change. So, it's my caveat to everyone that that is not a guaranteed funding stream forever. It is what we have today. I don't have any reason to believe, and I don't think Justin does either, that it will ever change, but a future council could make a different decision on that funding. So the way we started addressing this problem is in part because of the new Southeast Interceptor sewer line that went through the Kings Forest neighborhood. That triggered that 300-foot rule for a lot of homes, and it triggered a lot of discussion. We knew we had to start talking about what are we going to do and how are we going to deal with this issue. And so when we started the advisory committee portion of this, we really focused on just this part of the neighborhood, but the idea was that we would come up with a plan that we could use citywide. And this initial look that we looked at addressed about 603 lots. And the initial estimate we got to sewer the entire, just those 600 homes, was $30 million. And that was kind of dead on arrival, right? That just wasn't going to happen. When we worked with the advisory committee, some who are in the audience here, when we worked with them, they made a recommendation to cap everything at $25,000, and not just for the project area, but citywide. So that's kind of where that's what the advisory committee recommended. From there, it turned over to a series of back and forth between the advisory committee and the city council to where we ended up. And I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Justin?
Sure. Yeah, so late last summer, we started a series. I think we had 3 listening sessions, one including in this room, and really got a lot of feedback and really the impacts of what it would have on people's lives to have that kind of a cost burden. And the council listened, and I tell you, we went a lot farther than I expected, and I think we landed in a pretty good place that I think is fair for everybody. Because when we say the city's going to pay for and put in sewer lines, well, that's all the city ratepayers. I mean, there's not a magic pot of money city has, and it's not just some governmental organization somewhere. It's not like getting federal money. I mean, even though that's all taxpayer money as well. But, and that's part of the reason why we have to fund this on our own, is because there isn't federal money. You know, a large part of our sewer system in the mid-late 70s was all funded through federal money. I mean, 95% of it was, and those dollars just aren't there today. So we have to come up with local funding streams, and so what that is that's ratepayers. So people that pay their sewer bill, and there's a chart in here that'll show what those impacts are, and it does have real impacts to people's sewer bills. So that's the feedback we got was appreciated, and we really responded, because I can tell you, prior to those listening sessions, most of the council was not where we ended up. We ended up going far more and putting more burden onto those ratepayers than we initially had planned. So.
Okay. So what is the program? So there's two elements to the program. There's the neighborhood extension program. This is what's funded at $2.5 million a year. There's an application process that people can submit. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And essentially, there's a cost to that every homeowner will pay to connect to the sewer system. So it's not free, but it is substantially reduced to what the actual costs are to the rest of the ratepayers. So that's the extension program. When I talk about that, that's when you have a group of neighbors who are saying, my system's failed, I now want to get connected. They come together, they apply to the city. This isn't the city coming to them. This is the homeowners coming to the city saying, I would like to apply to have sewer brought down my street so we can connect. The CIP program is a different deal. What that is that, where we are going to do a project that benefits the whole community. We come in and we put a line down, for instance, we're going to be doing that this summer on Desert Woods. It takes 2 sewer pump stations offline, so it's a benefit to the entire community. That has a different flavor to it in terms of how we get people connected to that.
Is that Desert Woods Drive you're talking about?
Yep.
So, okay, what if you live off of we live in Kings Forest?
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Let me get through the presentation, then I'm going to take questions, all right? So, the code that we developed, there is an assistance program for low income to help offset the costs and fees. There's other entities involved as well that can help soften some of the costs involved that will be borne by the homeowners. And one of the things that we did with the code is, after working with DEQ for months, Department of Environmental Quality, they backed off what I said was the 300-foot rule, which frankly surprised not only us, it surprised everybody in the state, because there are many cities that had been having this very same program and said, this rule is in concrete, you can't change it, and I'm not quite sure what magic word we used, but somehow it got done. So there's no more a 300-foot rule in the code. However, new development, that does not apply. So a new development has to connect.
What is the 300-foot rule? Yeah.
Okay, so great question. I'm making some assumptions here. So what the 300-foot rule, as far as we can tell, this goes back to about 1972, was first developed in states in the Midwest to address water pollution from septic systems that were leaching into natural water systems. And the rule got established. Every state adopted this rule at the state level. EPA has it as a rule. And so what it says is if you have a septic system and you're within 300 feet of a sewer system, then, and your system is failing, you must connect. Now, local entities can have a more strict rule than that. And so the city actually, before we updated the code, the actual code said, if you're within 300 feet of the sewer, it doesn't matter whether your system's failing or not, you must connect. So removing that removes a significant burden. But if you compare to like Sisters rule right now, still in effect, is 1,500 feet. So that's why it can vary a lot depending upon where you're at. So, connection timing. The connection is voluntary, except it's mandatory when the on-site system fails. So that was, Department of Environmental Quality made it clear to us that if a system is failing and there is a stub out to that property, they must connect. There is no choice. And then if you apply for, if you want to go do an addition to your home, if you want to build an accessory dwelling unit, or do some other type of property modification, you're going to be required to connect. So if you're just staying in your home and you're not doing anything with it, until your system fails and there's a stub out, you're not connecting. Okay, funding factors. So one of the things that we worked with council on was to understand, so you've given this $2.5 million a year for us to award. What are the criteria you want us to use for figuring out who to award it to? These are the criteria that we came up with. So we look at what the cost is to do it, including the design cost. We look at how many homes are going to be able to connect, because that helps offset the cost of building the sewer. Is there any other construction going on? In other words, is there some other utility replacement that's going on at the same time? Is there street repaving going on? Is there something else happening? So if we can, what we call synergy projects, if we can tie them together. And then what's the percentage of property owners that are going to be served in total by Extant? So not just the ones that are committed to doing this, but how many more could be served by this. And then we look at the age of the existing septic systems in the area. So if we're in an area where all the septic systems are in excess of 25 years old, that's certainly going to score much higher than one where all the septic systems are 5 and 10 years old. And then the council gave flexibility to the city manager. If there were other factors as we implement this program that we come up with, we could also consider other factors that we determine. So, what are we doing here in 2019? So, we worked with city council. Justin, you were on that group? Yeah, so we worked, we got 6 applications for this initial funding level. I almost said you were Congress. Wow, sorry, I didn't mean to insult you. Council basically worked with us. We scored all 6 of those projects, and council had agreed to jumpstart the program by initially funding for this first year $10 million in projects, with the caveat that one of those projects was a capital project that benefits the whole community by getting rid of some sewer pump stations. So, on Desert Woods Drive, up 15th Street and a little bit into Nottingham, that is the initial project And that is what we call a capital improvement or CIP project. And that's about a $6 million project that we're doing to get those 2 pump stations offline. What that does is everybody along Desert Woods now has the option, once that line is in, to connect. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. They have the option to connect. And there's a reward to connect early, but they don't have to. And then we had people on Greenmont Drive, people on King Hezekiah, and people on King Solomon Court all applied to have their streets, have sewer brought in down their street to their homes. We had enough money to do all of that work, and we believe we have enough money to do the design for an area that's south of Ferguson. I don't even know if it shows it on here. Via Sandia. Yeah, it's down at the very bottom of the map here. They applied to get their area on sewer, and we're going to do the design for that. This will start this year at some point.
How were people notified to even do this?
So I'll come back to this. But getting a little bit to that. So we did do a lot of public notification. We tried to, as much as we could, but the program's going to reopen here. For applications for next year, you're going to need to submit your applications in November of this year. And then those will be sometime in February, March of 2020. We'll go through the scoring process again. And depending upon funding that's available, we'll look at how many of those projects we can get done. So the ones that score the highest are the ones that will likely get done. And I can tell you what we're trying to create is something that's what I call more of a perpetual program or perpetual cycle, so that, for instance, Via Sandia, they're going to be in design this year. So if they apply again this fall, they're in a situation because they'll be ready to construct in 2020. If, for instance, they didn't apply and all we got was a bunch of design applications, then we'll do design, but people are going to have to reapply to actually get it constructed the following year, because it's going to take us a while to do that design. That doesn't happen quickly. With some exception, there are streets within the Kings Forest area where we have 100% design done. So if you're in the Kings Forest area and you're interested, you apply, the design is done, we would be in a position, if funding is available, to construct in 2020.
I think it's important that you say that they have to be able to hook in, right? That the line has to be somewhere where they can connect.
Yeah.
It's not like in the middle.
Yeah, right. When you apply, the line has to be able to connect into one of the main trunk lines somewhere. So that's what we're going to look at when we score: is does it connect, and so is it really serviceable when we do that. So what are the fees involved with this? So there's if you connect within 2 years, the first 2 years, of that line becoming available, there's a 50% reduction in those connection fees, which is pretty substantial, and we'll talk about what those numbers are. After those 2 years, you pay the full connection fee. This connection fee is different than the SDC. We'll talk about that also in a moment. For homes that are along where the Southeast Interceptor went, we already stubbed out as part of that doing a major capital project. That's what that Southeast Interceptor was. And during that time when we did that, we made a commitment to those homeowners that, hey, once we come through here and we provide this stub out, essentially all you have to do is pay your SDCs and your plumbing fees, your plumbing costs to get connected. And we've honored that, council honored that. And so, but for 2 years. So Those of you that live along that line, you probably got a letter recently, signed by me, or should have. And that letter explains this very issue, that you have 2 years to take advantage of that deal. If you wait beyond that 2 years, that deal goes away. So,
Why weren't we given that 2-year timeline at the beginning when we were given that promise?
I can't tell you, we didn't have council authority at that point. It was a different council. But that's the situation now, is if you want to take advantage of that, you don't have to connect, but then whenever you do connect, you're facing then the full connection fees on top of the SDCs. So
We were told we
so-
didn't have to pay that.
I have a letter from the city manager saying that we would not
Have to pay that.
pay, and there was no,
No time limit, no nothing.
yeah.
So I'm happy to talk to you one-on-one and certainly Justin, and I'm happy to look at the letter, but I wasn't aware that the city manager ever put out a letter on that, but,
We didn't put it out, it was in
So-
response to a letter. we-
yeah. But I'm happy to talk to you about
I
that.
included the city council people too. on
Yeah. We can talk afterwards so we understand more on that. So the advisory committee, if you remember, initially, what they wanted was a cap of $25,000 total. We realized when we worked with the advisory committee, when we were working with council, that was gonna be a very difficult number to hit. It just wasn't likely that we were gonna get there. So then working with the advisory committee, they said, put a cap on the public side of the costs, so the cost coming down to get the sewer to my property, put a cap on that of $18,000. Where we ended up with city council, you can see if you connect within the first 2 years of that line being active, you pay the $4,250 plus the current SDC rate, which brings your cost to connect to just over $9,000. If you wait after the 2 years, then you're paying the full connection fee of $8,500 and whatever the current SDC rate is at the time. So currently the SDC rate, Systems Development Charge, is right now at $4,800 per home. So right now you can see that where the cost came out relative to what the advisory committee recommended, that we actually came in below, or council came in below what the advisory committee recommended. What I want to be clear about here is this is not all of the costs that a homeowner is going to incur. This is the public side. This is what covers the pipe coming down the street and the piece of pipe that comes off that main line to your property. It doesn't cover the costs of decommissioning your septic tank, all the plumbing you're going to have to reconfigure to get your home connected to that point. Go ahead. So, and a little bit more to what I was just talking about. The public side of the infrastructure, when I talk about the public side, it's from the property line all the way out to the pipe in the street. And this, we used in our calculations an average of 30 feet, and then we went and looked at what we are actually paying per foot to put in this piece of red pipe to the property line. It's costing us anywhere from $250 to $350 a foot. So do the math on that, do simple math, 300 times 30, $9,000, right? So council came in and said $8,500 cap, which is a pretty good deal, because it's typically less, it's on the low end of that scale, and then agreed if you connect within the first 2 years to cut that in half. So an even better deal, but to be clear, that's not magic money. The rest of the ratepayers in the community who are on sewer are paying that difference, and that's what Justin was talking about. So that's where that cost differential is getting covered. When we talk about this main line in the street, the one that's coming down the street, What our costs are that we're seeing today is anywhere from $800 to $2,000 per foot. So you can do the math on if you had 100-foot wide property, and if you were paying $2,000 a foot to put that pipe across the front of your property, you can do the math and figure out it's going to quickly exceed the value of your home, because you got to go more than just down it. So again, the point here is that a lot of the costs involved here, those costs are not being passed on to you. Those costs are being taken care of by the rest of the ratepayers, probably to the tune of probably 95% or more of the costs are covered by the rest of the ratepayers in the city. And I don't know, Justin, you might want to add to that if you have any view on that.
Yeah, as far as the price, not only is it, if you have a 100-foot wide lot, but you could be 300 feet to where the line is. So you could be possibly looking at a 400-foot line, because the city code says not only do you have to bring the sewer line to your property line, but you must go through your property line. So you could be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars to not only bring the sewer line to your property, but then through it, so your neighbor. And then also when you look at the depths that you have to be, is that maybe the depth isn't too bad for your property, but it needs to be, we have to have a logical extension of the sewer line. And so we have to be able to service other properties down the road. And so you might end up having to put a depth in on your own property that may be much deeper than a neighbor has to. So this actually allows us, by us doing it, instead of allowing, because the do-nothing option is every 300 feet, some homeowner is covering every 300 feet. And then we have a really mismatched system possibly, because maybe the sewer line isn't as deep as what it needs to be for the guy on the road, because we have, we're looking to do, and the preference of the city is to do a gravity-fed system. As Tom mentioned with the pump stations are expensive to run in the future, and not only is there maintenance costs, but there's electrical costs. I mean, they're expensive, and we have a lot of them.
400.
Over 400, yeah, about 400 pump stations, and Tom will tell you a story about New Orleans that has less than 100. And so we've moved to a gravity-fed system, and it's a better system in the long run. And actually, in the out years, is actually helps keep those rates down, because we're not constantly repairing and maintaining all these pump stations all over the city.
And just as a refresher, this is why we're having this conversation now, is because people in our neighborhood were actually facing these sticker prices up front all on their own. We had people that were facing upwards of $300,000
And higher.
because they had to go all the way down the street to get to from the pipe to their house. And if you were the first person to do that, you were paying that all by yourself. So that's why we had this conversation, the advisory committee and the council process, and that's kind of the lead up to it.
I can tell you, we've had homeowners come in to the city who they have no more room on their property for another, to fix their current system. And there's one just north of King's Forest right now. There's a homeowner. She's not in her home anymore. She can't live there. And there's no room to fix her system. And she's probably 600 feet away from the sewer line. So the cost to bring sewer to her home way exceeds the value of her home. She's incredibly fortunate that she had a second home on the beach somewhere on the coast. So she moved there, but her home is sitting vacant now and waiting for us at some point to bring a line down the street. And I've seen it happen in a few different locations down around the southeast neighborhood where we've seen it where there was nothing anyone could do, and we watched people walk away from their house. So this program helps alleviate that problem.
And the sad thing is, we were promised sewers back when we were annexed in, many years ago.
I know there's a lot of debate about that. If our city attorney was here, she would disagree with you, but I'm not gonna get into that. I'm gonna stick to engineering. So a recap of what we're doing here this year. We're spending $10 million. You will see construction start sometime later this summer, probably August. We will be coming down Desert Woods. We'll be going up 15th Street into Nottingham, decommissioning 2 pump stations. We will get about 60 homes that will be eligible to connect. It'll be up to them whether they actually connect, if they want to take advantage of that deal. Once that line becomes active, they'll have 2 years to take advantage of that reduced fee. If they want to wait beyond that, they can, but then they're going to pay whatever that fee is at that future date, which I can almost guarantee you will be higher. Let's see. Then the remaining money so we spent, that initial project is $6 million. The remaining $4 million is going to be applied to these other neighborhoods. I think if you go to the next slide, we show that. Oh, it didn't, sorry. So the remaining $4 million will take care of Greenmont, Desert Woods, King Hezekiah, and King Solomon Court. That's what the remaining $4 million. So we'll be constructing all of those too. So if you live there, you're going to see lots of construction equipment and disruption down those streets as the contractor is working on those. And Lindsay will be here with you through every single moment. She's much smarter than me and a lot more energy, so she's got this. So, hold on before questions. We're almost at the end. So, how are we paying for this? So this is what the council looked at. Okay, what are the alternatives to pay for this? We looked at paying for everything 100%, no cost passed on to any homeowners. You can see what happened, that top line up there, really skyrocketed rates when you go out about 10 years, and that was not acceptable to council. So what they agreed to was this line right here. So you can see it really, the increases are pretty minimal until we get out to about 2024 before they start to come up, and they still don't go up as high as what the other options were. So that's what council's agreed to do. That's where the $2.5 million number came from. That's kind of kept everything at a level of increase that council felt was acceptable, and I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, so one thing that was important to me is that when you look at the upper lines, is that those were going out and acquiring debt. And so, if this $2.5 million option that we're doing every year, we're cash funding that. So we're not acquiring the debt, because the cost on the $30 million, the debt financing on that, it really becomes like $54 million over the life of the debt. And so that really affected rates. And so that's why I think having this program where we're cash funding as we go, yeah, is it gonna take us a long time to get through all of this? Absolutely. But I think it's a better and wiser way to go. And it doesn't really have the effect on the rates that going out and acquiring the debt does. And so that was important to me. It was trying to find that balance between not impacting the homeowners that are dealing with this issue, but also limiting the impact to the ratepayers as well, which hopefully you all become ratepayers too.
Next slide. Here. So this is the last slide. So you want to learn more, go to the city's website. This is really hard to see here, but essentially, if you go over, when you go to the city website, it says city projects, and then down here, this will drop down, and it says septic-to-sewer program, and you can learn lots of details about the whole program. I think in the end, really the gist of the the little article there is, you know, we believe we have found a reasonable solution. It's not paying free or paying less, but it's a lot less painful than what we were looking at before when we started down the whole thing. So I'm going to turn this over to Beth real quick because she has a few things to say. Then you can ask all the questions you want.
I was gonna say, before we go into questions, Beth, who is one of our neighbors, and she's on our board, and she was on the committee, let her, this will be quick.
Okay, so I'm just gonna talk to you about, once this is done, and I live on King Solomon, so 2 years ago, we put up with the whole thing of drilling 20 feet across and 20 feet down, and that big pipe is in front of my house, down King Solomon, that whole area. So when you talk about the SEI, the Southeast Interceptor, that is what's in front of my house. So my septic has failed twice since December. And I have to get it done. So I chose Fergus Plumbing to do it. And then I was walking my dog and I started talking to some of our neighbors saying, hey, does anybody else think they want to hook up? Well, one thing led to another, and I had 50 people come forward saying that they would be interested in doing this all together as kind of a group rate. So this doesn't have anything to do with the city. This is something that I initiated on my own. So the reason we wanted to kind of bring this up to you is to give you a sense of what the private costs are once the line is in front of your house. And so right now, we had about 50 people with bids that got bids. There are 9 estimates that are still out that we haven't heard back from, but out of that original 50, we've got 26 that have agreed to hook up. So we're gonna start construction on this probably in the next week, 10 days or so. We'll be starting to hook our homes up from the house to the stub out, because all of us have stub outs, we're already on the line. So just as an overview of the costs on that, the plumbing costs from the house to the stub out, they're running about $8,000 to $13,000. We're all on half-acre lots or more. So this is, and in some cases, like at my house, my septic drains to the back of the house. This means going underneath the house and reversing the plumbing so that the plumbing will drain out the front and gets the shortest run to the stub out. So the costs, again, are $8,000 to $13,000 is pretty much the bids that have been coming in. And then when you add the SDCs to that $47.95 system development charges, we're looking at about $13,000 to $18,000. So the reason I wanted to say that is so that some of you guys could start rolling that around in your head as you look down the path and see that, eventually you'll have to hook up. Now those rates obviously will continue to go up. We're very fortunate. We're gonna be the first ones out of the gate. We're gonna test this out, and then at the fall meeting, we should all be hooked up, and I'll come back and actually give a report on how it went, what we learned, what went well, what didn't go well. Go ahead.
Quick question, did you get costs on decommissioning your tank?
So what we did, the reason we went this route is there, yes, thank you. The question was, did we get costs on decommissioning the tank? So to do this hookup, you have to not only get your house to the stub out, the line to the stub out has to be gravity fed, it has to go as deep as it needs so it's gravity fed, but you have to decommission your septic system, which means you get a permit, another permit, and they come out and they mostly are just filling the tank with like a sand slurry, and then it has to be capped off. So the way that I wanted to do this was I did not want to go and deal with all the different permits and finding somebody to do the septic and all that. So what I said to Fergus was, you give me one cost, you do all that stuff, you get the permits, you do everything, and just let me pay my SDC charges of the $47.95 so that I only have to write 2 checks and I don't have to manage this whole piece. And so that's what they're doing for all 26 homes. They're going to take that whole piece, and in doing so, they've been able to work with the city and the county to get some reduced rates on some of the things because we're doing it as a group. So there's cost savings in that. The other cost saving is that they can kind of move their equipment from one house to the next, and they're not bouncing, one house at a time all around the city. Go ahead.
Beth, doing what you just said, not having to move their equipment around, did Fergus cut us a deal on doing multiple homes?
Yes, did first cut us a deal on doing multiple homes. So at the 20 home mark, they gave us all 10% off. And they're also looking at some other savings again, so they will get some saving from the city on the permits, et cetera, because we're doing this as a group. So I think that there were a number of things that came up that were really helpful. The other thing, just to finish this up, is that I've been, since I kind of spearheaded this and my background is project management, I've been keeping track of everything that we're doing, all the emails I've sent out, all the communications, and my goal is that when we're done with this project and we report out, that we hand this off to whoever is down the road going to do the same thing, so that you guys can use our template.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. So that you can tweak it in any way that you need to, so that we can make this as simple as possible. This has been a really arduous process for many of us. Many of us, Tom knows well, and the city council, because we have been speaking up for a couple of years now. So now that we're on board and we're going to just get this thing done, and we're going to try and move it forward and make it as easy as possible on the rest of you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, any questions about the presentation stuff? I'll start there.
Can you clarify on, you were saying if you wanted to do an addition that requires a permit, that you have to hook up, is that only if you have a stub out? Or like,
So yeah, it's only if there's a stub out to your property.
otherwise you can get a permit and expand as long as your system can.
Maybe. So what I've heard is the county, I'm sorry. Thank you. The question was, do you have to connect if all you're doing is an addition or some type of ADU to your home? And the answer is yes, you have to connect if there's a stub out. Now, one of the things that you're applying to the county because you're on a septic system, and if the county says your septic system can't handle more, we have nothing to do with it, they won't issue you a permit.
Can they expand your system? Your septic?
If you have room on your property and the right soils.
You can still do
Back there,
I'll try to talk loud enough so he doesn't have to repeat the question back. So my question, I live off of Rockaway Terrace. I'm right there on the corner of Admiral Way and Rockaway. If I, on my own initiative, went to every house up and down that street and tried to gather as much people together for applications in November, if we all submitted at the same time, would that help out you in being able to then give us a better timeline and pricing structure for all of us if we were to all join together?
please do. Thank you.
I'm
That is, so the way it works is you all don't have to submit individual applications. You get your neighbors together. There's a form there that you get your neighbors to sign. Everybody who signs that is committed to connecting. So be clear, if somebody knocks on your door and says, do you want to be part of this program? And you sign that, and we pick that project, by you signing that, you are committed to connecting. That is a done deal. You're connecting.
Within 2 years, or?
Yes, within 2 years from that line becoming active.
If
So-
you want to just.
But that's how, so that's what we're gonna look at. So let's say there's 50 homes on your street, and let's say you talk to all 50, and let's say 35 of them say, yes, I'm gonna connect, I'll sign, I'll do it if we can get this discount deal, we'll do it. If another street over has 50 homes, and they get 40 people to sign, they just beat you, right? So the whole idea is yeah, this is about you talking to your neighbors. That was something we heard loud and clear, I think council heard loud and clear, was we didn't want the city driving this. So now this is up to you as a homeowner to work with your neighbors to make this happen.
But what if you're on a small street, but both, you're in the middle of two streets that are being done this summer? Where are you? King, J2?
Yeah,
We don't have very many houses on that street, so why would, just because somebody has more? And we have old septics.
Yeah, so not only,
King Hezekiah, it's the one in Orion Greens. So King Hezekiah
Isn't that
Yeah,
correct?
so
It's just that,
the question is that if you have a short street that's in between a couple, well, the percentage is based on the number of homes that you have. And so if there's 100%, if you get all 7, like on King Hezekiah, there's 8 or 9 in there. But they all signed up, so that was 100%,
Okay.
yeah.
To make sure.
And then also
It's King Hezekiah Way, it's that little piece of
It's
King
a short
Hezekiah.
section.
Not all King Hezekiah, just King Hezekiah Way.
Is the one that's getting it done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that little piece.
Between Orion and Desert Woods.
Yeah.
Between Orion and Desert
Yeah.
Woods, there's only 9 of us.
Did you say that if you didn't get, there were 6 applications, you took 4, if you didn't get picked, you need to reapply next year?
yes,
And we got picked for the design, but we still have to reapply for next year for the actual construction. So every year, if we don't get picked, even though our design is done, because you have some designs already done in the whole Desert Woods area that don't have it. So the design is just one part that's been done in 2019. We then, every year, until we get the construction in.
right, because what we do is we look at the funding for each year and say, okay, well, we have.
And now you have 50 or 40 or whatever, and yeah.
Right, yeah, so some of that funding is tied up with construction dollars,
Right.
and then some of that, there's a little bit left over, so we'll look at design in another area.
And
And
what I'm gonna tell you is, get your neighbors to sign.
Yeah.
That's critical. So,
Is all of King's Forest design done?
Sorry.
Is all of King's Forest design done?
that, part of that committee process was to do a design, and we actually authorized, I don't know if it's finished yet, but it's, yeah,
So it's
yes.
already done, it will be done?
in the King's Forest area.
In all
yeah.
of King's Forest?
Yes.
Yeah, that's 600 some odd homes.
You've had your hand up for a while.
I know. I actually have 2 questions. The first is, when you finish a cul-de-sac street as part of this 2019 work, is that considered active and we can immediately connect, go in and?
So the way it works is once I, or whoever comes in after me, Lindsay, once they decide that, hey, this line, we can take flow down this line, then a letter, it will be sent to every homeowner with pretty much the information in a very brief form that you saw in this presentation. And she signs it, and she's gonna say, this line is now available and the clock is now ticking as of this date. You have 2 years from the date on that letter. And so that's, and then we have a whole process working with our planning department that we're monitoring the clock. And if you come in 2 years and 1 day, we're gonna know, and you're not gonna get the deal, so.
Okay. I have another question. All right, so between, we're gonna have to pay, SDC fees and a connection permit.
Correct.
About $9,000, a little over $9,000. And then we have to pay another $8,000 to $13,000 to actually connect our houses.
Correct.
So do we have an opportunity to pay this year for the $9,000 and kind of lock in that fee so that we don't have to have a $22,000 hit in next year?
That's a really good question. I haven't had a lot of people come and say, I want to pay now.
Well, I don't, because $22,000 is a lot to shell out in 1 year, but if you can plan it over a 2-year period, it certainly helps.
I don't want to give you bad information, so I'm gonna work with Lindsay to make sure we get you correct information, and we'll put that on the website. But the only way I could see us collecting money in advance is if we knew we were doing the street.
Well, we are.
And if you're in that situation, then I could see that we do it. We wouldn't be able to collect the money if we have no plan to do that street. So, you've had your hand up a long time.
My wife and I, we were the ones that went and did the collection of the names. And, you know, the people on VSND.
Okay.
We work with Skip, Martin, and Susanna Jubler,
Yeah.
and Chris Henson, I believe,
Yeah.
are the names. And so they said, you know, we like your proposal because it's downhill and good gravitational flow and all that. And so we applied, we got 62% participation. And when you say your street is on the list, that means that you will do the design this year for sure? Because there seemed to be at some point in one of the emails, a little bit of doubt that that would be done because of the funding.
Yeah, so I'm the one that actually helped write that email, so I know what you're talking about. So the question, in case everybody didn't hear, this gentleman was the one that initiated the whole project for Via Cyndia Court and got 62% of his neighbors to agree to submit. Their project was selected for design because they weren't part of the King's Forest design area. Our response to him was, we are going to do the design under the idea that we actually have funding. So what I'm saying by that is, so I have a total of about $12.5 million here, kind of in the next year to work with. If the bids, right now, we do what's called engineer's estimate, and we've come up with an engineer's estimate that says, hey, this work that we're proposing to do is gonna cost you $10 million. If the bids on that come in at 13, then we'll let council know, and we'll be talking to council saying, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to cut some projects out? If so, which ones? Or do you guys want us, do you want to put more money in it? And so, but that would be an open conversation that we would have with council. I will tell you, our engineer's estimates though recently have been very good. We haven't been far off the mark, so I don't anticipate that happening, but the construction industry is changing quick, so.
Me?
Yeah.
You mentioned Nottingham, going, one of the projects going to Nottingham. Nottingham is not really a part of this, right?
So Nottingham has a septic, a sewer pump station. It's a problematic sewer pump station operationally, so we want to get rid of that. So we're going to connect that pump station to the new Southeast Interceptor. So we've got to go a little ways in to where that pump station is to essentially decommission it, and then there'll be no more pump station there to feed. So that it's not about getting homes connected, because the homes are all connected now. It's a matter of getting rid of that pump station that we have to maintain.
So the homes in Nottingham will never have to face this
No,
connection?
you already have, you're already
No, I already
connected.
pay that bill.
Yeah. Yes?
Are there other neighborhoods that have already been designed?
No. So this has gotten, I mean, this is a new program, and this got a lot more attention, frankly, than what I thought it would. And we do have people that are talking to us right now from neighborhoods that are all over different parts of town that are interested in this. So they see the value in this, and that's why I think in the future this is going to get more competitive. I think as the word gets out, as we give these presentations and talk to more people, I think you're going to see more and more people applying for these limited dollars trying to get on this.
I live on Westview, which is right next to Greenlawn.
Okay.
So
That's in Desert Woods.
Yeah,
Was
it's
that
in Desert
designed?
Woods.
It's designed. It's designed. You would need to apply and do what this gentleman back here suggested, is go talk to your neighbors if you want to do it.
So we wouldn't need to apply for the design process.
You know, we'll figure out what needs to be done. We'll figure out, does it need design or not? And that goes into the scoring criteria, right? If it's already designed and it's ready to construct, that's gonna go higher on the list. If we need to do design, obviously that's gonna stretch out over a 2-year period, because it's gonna take us probably about a year to do the design, so.
How long do you anticipate this whole project taking? And will the state give a timeline on that 300-foot rule, or is it gone for good?
No, at $2.5 million, I think Tom's group had really roughly estimated about $150 million to sewer all the homes in the city. So do the math, $2.5 million a year, that's gonna take a while to do. So it's gonna be a while, unless there's a council that wants to add extra dollars. The problem is that we can't bind future councils financially, and so right now we're committed to 2.5, but maybe there's a bond in the future, or more money in the sewer fund. Maybe some years are better than others in the fund, and so we have some extra money. It'll vary a little bit, but at minimum, we're doing the 2.5 for now.
So is that 300-foot rule, is that just gone?
It is.
So in 50 years?
It's gone for now. I just want to I mean, we did our best to document what the state said. We put it in all of our documents, but the politicians change, new people get elected, and you could get somebody in there that basically says, we're backing out of that deal. We're re-implementing this 300-foot rule. So
It's still a law.
It's
just
still
an
a law, it's still a
administrative
state law. We just got, we got this loophole in it that.
So really what the state allowed us to do is to redefine what legal capacity is. So when, say you would need to go down to the county and get a permit because your tank has failed, you need to put a new tank in. So they'll give you a form, and you'll take that down to the city permit desk, and the engineer, private engineering will look, they'll measure and say, okay, are you within 300 feet? So there's a couple boxes they check. Are you within 300 feet, yes or no? And then then the engineer looks going, okay, is there capacity? Is there physical capacity? And that's pretty easy to tell if you can add flow to that or not. And then is there legal capacity? Our interpretation of legal capacity was, if there was physical capacity, there was legal capacity. Well, the state allowed us, DEQ allowed us to redefine what legal capacity is. And so, because we have this program, the engineer says, no, there's not legal capacity. And so at this time, the DEQ is saying, you're allowed to redefine what legal capacity is. And so then you take that form back down to the county, and they'll give you permits to fix your system. Now, ideally, that's not what we want. We don't want people, putting money into a system, and then sometime, maybe in the short future, you end up with a stub in front of your house. That's not an ideal situation. But at the same time, if say you have a failing tank and you discovered it because you're selling your house, and they pumped it and did an inspection and say, oh, well, we never had any problems with our system. Well, yeah, it's because the tank was a hole in the bottom, and and essentially your tank was part of your leach field. Well, that allows that this redefinition, if you're within 300 feet, and there's people, I hear stories and run into this all the time, is you have people that now have the ability, if they're within 300 feet but can't afford clearly to connect. And there was one not too far from here that was 290 feet. Well, that's a significant amount of money to connect, and it was causing a sale problem, and they were trying to get out of the house to move on to something else. And but now this gave that person, this program now as of February 1, gave this property owner the ability to repair their tank and replace their tank. And then so that way they could sell the home, and the buyer takes that responsibility moving forward.
You've had your hand up. Huh?
So is what I'm hearing you say is, if you do have a failing system, the city will give you a permit to fix it. I live on Admiral, and there's probably people on my street that don't want to hook up because it's expensive. And so, if that's not an option of getting a line down our street, you are giving out
The caveat is that the city doesn't issue septic tank permits. So that's a statewide permit system that the DEQ gives the Deschutes County the authority for that, because they have the health department. And so Deschutes County, even though it's the city, within the city limits, Deschutes County issues permits for septic systems. So,
So
but,
they
but
would-
yes, they would give you, because we would say, no, you don't have legal capacity. And now, if we said you did have legal capacity because there's a stub out in front of your house, then you would need to connect. But if you don't have a stub out, we'll say, no, you don't have legal capacity.
So how does that work for Rockaway Terrace that comes right off of Admiral? If they all sign up and they're all ready to go and we don't put it down our street?
If you don't have a stub out to connect to,
Yeah.
it's not a problem.
I'm saying, what's gonna happen with Rockaway?
They can't, unless they have a road that actually can dead end into a sewer line, they can't apply, I mean, right?
They can't apply?
No.
Right, you can apply,
You
but
can
you're not
apply,
likely
but
to
you're
get
not
it.
gonna- yeah.
I mean, we had one person apply that was, you know, 3/4 of a mile away from the line. They were the only person, and there was maybe 100 homes. Well, that one person didn't get, that was one of the six that wasn't chosen. Okay.
So can you, just one more time clarify, so the people on King Solomon Court and all these, and the 3 streets, the ones that signed the document, they have 2 years and they must hook up?
Yes, so they'll actually sign an agreement. Anybody that signs the petition
Yeah.
to the application, there'll be an agreement that the city will record with their property, and that will say, yes, we are agreeing to connect.
Okay, and anybody on that street that did not sign that document, they just fall into, you just have to hook up when it.
They may get really lucky, and by not signing, they could decide they want to sign within the 2 year, once it's available. They get a great deal, and they didn't put any risk in it. So, they kind of win the lottery, for lack of a better term.
And that was, one thing that was important to me was to add the incentive piece. Was, okay, here's our connection fee, because we want to recoup at least a portion of the stub out fees. But we want to encourage people to connect, and so that's why we did the 50% reduction. And I actually pushed some of my fellow councilors initially it was a 1 year reduction. And so we pushed that because I wanted to give people more time to be able to plan and to be able to, because it's a big financial impact, and you need to be able to plan that.
Well, and just really finding a window of time for the construction to happen when
Right.
everybody's so busy, that was, Fergus and I started talking in October, and we haven't even started construction yet, so the lead time on this has been tremendous.
Any more questions?
So are you saying that once you start, like I did on King Solomon Court, that you would be done within a year? And because you're gonna be starting the next group of people?
So, King Solomon Court is on that list, right? Yes, I'm sorry, I'm having to remember. So, we'll be starting that work here. Where the contractor actually starts, I don't know, but the goal will be that all that construction work will be done essentially a year from now. So you would get a notice that, from us that, hey, this line is now active and ready, and if you signed it, you have to connect, and if you didn't, we're gonna tell you, you have 2 years to get this great deal, otherwise you're paying full freight.
And do they consult with you about where the stub out is gonna be?
Yes, we go go above and beyond trying to work with people to get the stuff out in a place that works best for them.
Because initially they had to go through this big rock outlet.
Right, we definitely, we look at aerial photos, we go look at the actual lot, we do our best to avoid those kinds of things, but sometimes it's unavoidable.
One thing that we did, a lot of us did on King Solomon, is we actually had a person come in, go under our house and look and see, is it okay, can we reverse the plumbing? And then they lined it up so that it was the closest, the most direct route to the street. So where the city had suggested in some cases we put our stub outs, we moved them tremendously because we got input. So if you can pay a plumber $60 or whatever to come and give you advice on that, I highly recommend it because it saved a lot of us a lot of money.
Okay.
I have one question. Why are we starting in August and not beginning of summer? I mean, it seems like you're missing a couple of months of opportunity.
Yeah, I can only crack the whip so hard on my employees.
Because you're lazy.
I mean, the reality is,
No more than
I understand, and I pushed both the consulting team and the staff as hard as I could to get to where we're at today, where we're gonna be basically awarding a contract in June. But by the time we award the contract and then you get through all the approvals that we gotta go through, by the time you actually see work on the ground, it's August. So it's just kind of way this one worked out. I much prefer to be awarding contracts in the spring, where they got the whole summer to work through it. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And one of the things that I've changed since I've been at the city is it used to be no construction happened in the wintertime. I'm trying to get construction, we can't afford to shut down for 6 months anywhere. And so we put in our contracts that we tell the contractors, yeah, we know it snows. We know it's cold. That's why we're gonna pay you. Go ahead, dig away. So yeah, we try to work year round now.
Well, and this initial year, we didn't adopt this program until December.
Yeah.
And then it didn't go into effect until February. So by the time, late February on the 26th, so this year was pushed back a little bit. And then it kind of goes back to Tom's very first slide when he was talking about Murphy, is that design bid build process. It's a time consuming process. It's government procurement, so it doesn't move as quickly as
We would like.
Yeah.
I saw one more.
Yeah, there was another question over here.
All right, we've worn you out.
All right. Thank you.